Ashley Wingo is a visual artist whose work currently explores the often overlooked nuances and moments of a day or an experience. She works mostly with found objects, and she's drawn to things of history and story and uses humor and candor to illuminate the soul already present in each found piece. In her work, Ashley investigates the fictional nature of memory and how nostalgia manipulates our personal record of events. She uses what she calls peripheral materials, trash, discarded household items, paper scraps, and objects that have lost their usefulness, agency, or function. And she uses these to fabricate new narratives through jewelry and objects. Ashley brings these materials and objects from the margins into focus to explore memory and the subconscious. She investigates these ideas through jewelry, small objects, and installations, recording a history of use while also capturing the cunning and deceptive nature of engaging with the past. In addition to her jewelry and small sculpture work, Ashley also maintains a floral design practice and is an accomplished singer and songwriter. She holds a BFA from Auburn University in studio art and an MFA from the University of Georgia, where she studied jewelry and metalwork under Demi Thumlaudis and Mary Helen Pierce, who will actually be with us in July for a mid-career residency. We've been fortunate to showcase Ashley's work in our gallery in our first ever graduate exhibition last summer. We've really loved having her here in the studio and with us this month, and we'll be sad to see her go. Yeah, let's welcome Ashley and hear from her.
All right, thank you, Shane, and thanks to everybody here for having me. Y'all are the best. And this place is awesome. Okay, so I am just gonna do a talk on some of the work I've made and some of the things I think about, and then maybe a little bit about like some of the work I've been making here. But I have notes that I'm gonna look at. Just if yeah, just I don't know. Okay. Yeah, okay. So in grad school, I kind of honed my ideas to, I've always been a collector. I've always kind of like, my art is centralized around stuff that I found. But I never really investigated where that like impulse came from or why I was doing that. And I didn't actually think, about doing that. I just kind of like I work really like intuitively, so I just kind of like let that happen and unfold as it did. But then grad school kind of, if it does anything, it prompts you to ask 1 million questions. And so I eventually like found my way to like the collecting and maybe why I collect and maybe what I'm drawn to about some of these things that I find. And the road kind of narrowed down to nostalgia. And not really in the standard sense that you think about when you're thinking about nostalgia, like rose-colored glasses or thinking about the past fondly per se, but more kind of about like the more deceptive side of nostalgia, and how nostalgia kind of functions as a form of deception. Um, and initially, so I kind of started my research on nostalgia, and there's actually more information on it than I really anticipated when I started. But Johannes Hofer was a med student in the 1600s in Switzerland. And really, he was the one that coined the term nostalgia, which was initially a medical term that meant like pain from missing your homeland. So a lot of these Swiss mercenary soldiers were getting sick and they were like defecting from the war, and so much that they needed to coin this term nostalgia. And they thought it was like a sickness, like a mental sickness. It's not that anymore. It's kind of like downgraded to just like an emotional sense. But initially, it was like a very extreme kind of, I guess, influence. And so that's kind of like the lens of nostalgia that I'm thinking about. And so what I'm thinking about isn't necessarily like, yeah, like fondness. It's more kind of like deception and longing, and it's wrapped up in loss. I did a lot of research on this and I found a lot of good information on it. And David Barry wrote a book called On Nostalgia, and this is like a quote that I really like from him, and it says, "When the real is no longer what it used to be, nostalgia assumes its full meaning. So I'm trying to capture that sense of nostalgia, lost longing, in the work that I'm making. So this like in between space of like the absence of the past, but still the presence of the past. So this like absence and presence, like this like liminal space between this kind of uneasiness that we get in the present from remembering the past. So I want my work to be animated with a sense of kind of agitation and deflation, but at the same time being kind of like pretty too. So like the colors that I'm choosing, or I guess more that I'm drawn to, um, are pretty, they're bright. I use like iridescence. But then there's like this sense of degradation that's also present. And so I'm kind of like always trying to find the sweet spot between those two things. And yeah, so I'm kind of trying to grasp the fleeting experiences, stabilize them, like fix their aura into a form that can be like witnessed and worn and touched and sensed. So a lot of these things have had like a former life, and that life and that presence of that life is present in the work that I'm making, even though I'm kind of like adding new materials to that thing. So I'm like mimicking the erasure or the time of like the time passing with like the erasure of image. So a lot of like the work that you can, I should keep, oh my God, I've forgotten to keep moving. I got so caught up. Okay, hold on. How do you keep going? There we go. Oh my gosh. Okay, here's a new word. Um, so let me find what I'm talking about. So here's like some of those found materials that I'm talking about. And some of these, like we have a hair curler, little piece of ceramic plate, and just all kinds of stuff kind of like hodgepodged in there to kind of create this like collage. So collage is something else I want to talk about too. But while I'm thinking about it, there's like, you know, everything is kind of fuzzy. We have like high resolution, like gems, you know, precious stones. Like I know this is a pearl, but I'm not sure what these are, with plastic and acrylic, and this is just like painter's tape. But I thought the painter's tape was like so nice, and so I just like, you know, cold connected it to this foam. This foam was like a huge thing for me during grad school. I like found piles and piles of it in Birmingham, which is where I'm from, and it's like in everything, mostly because of how like of the colors. But okay, so I think I was talking about like like I like to kind of sand things back. I like to do like layers to kind of like simulate that time and time passing. So I'll add, you know, multiple layers to kind of create that or simulate or mimic, you know, faded hues is kind of telling the story of time passing, accumulation, overuse, all of that. So I'm kind of thinking about all these words. Something else I like to do during grad school was just like create an index of words that all kind of like orbited the same thing, and it kind of helped me figure out what I was trying to talk about. But collecting and including like beautiful things alongside trash was kind of like maybe how I stabilized myself. Like if it included trash and it was like degraded in some sense, then I would collect it. If I found it and it had, that was kind of like my criteria for collecting and finding, was it had some sort of like degraded essence. Um and this is a very bad picture, but you can see. I started doing these sediment pieces too, where I would embed things in this like two-part like epoxy clay. And then I would just like create these mounds, like this, and then I would like cut them or sand them back. So I actually really didn't even know what they were going to look like when I was making them, because everything was kind of spontaneous. So there is like a degree of spontaneity that I like about making. I think everybody probably feels that way to a degree, but I think that's another reason I really like these found objects, is because it's more of like a jumping off place like to me, like a piece of sheet metal is like a computer, a blank computer page or a blank piece of paper. It's like paralyzing. And so to kind of remedy some of that stasis, I like to collect things and then respond to those things, so that I'm not just like paralyzed, which happens to me a lot. So even if it's like I find carpet foam or these little plastic things, I'm like, okay, at least it's somewhere to start. And I'm not like, what do I make with this like really uh generic piece of metal? Again, here's like an example of like, partially obscured images, plastic gems. These like, I think these are just rhinestones, but then you have, pearls. I was really into the movie Grey Gardens while I was in grad school, and I feel like those two women, the Onassis, I think it was a mother and a daughter, um, they kind of like encapsulated and like put imagery to some of the things I was thinking about. And that's like they are really in this state of unawareness. But they're still kind of living in between worlds. There's like the glamour of their past that's still like very active in their heads. But they're it's almost like they're unaware that there's like raccoons in the next room, like, and holes in the wall, and like it's raining. Have y'all seen this? Yes. Okay. Like awesome. It's interesting. It's like interesting. And I kind of was like, this is kind of what I want, like this essence of like they're clearly like really living in the romance of their past, which kind of, I guess, keeps them from losing it completely, because you look around and it's just like they're living in squalor almost, but they're able to kind of maintain that thread of sanity because of something that happened. This is just like the narrative I'm writing about them. But I kind of, yeah, that was something I thought about a lot, was that like you can live like an entire life. And this is kind of like I was watching this movie when I was making these pieces here. And there's just something beautiful and there's something kind of like sad about these works to me. And that's kind of at least what I wanted them to look like. Cause it's the same thing with them, with the Onassis sisters. It's like there's something beautiful about that whole life, but then it's also like what you're looking at is very sad. And so like the combination of those two things is like kind of the sweet spot that I'm trying to achieve with this work here. Um, all right, let me keep on. This is the work I did in grad school. Um, and some of this work back here, which I think I rushed through, was the stuff I did at the beginning of school. That kind of was like the very beginning of like me exploring nostalgia and all that comes with that. So yeah, I think that like if I had to boil things down, this is like some of those. I made a series of rings, kind of more on that sediment uh path where again I'm embedding things and standing back and kind of creating these like recognizable signet forms. But yeah, I think there's like a bunch of like branches that come off of this nostalgic tree, and some of them or the way that I make, and a lot of the times it's like it's the collage, it's collecting, it's wear and tear, and so I'm kind of always like cycling between um all of these things. And I'm not sure where I'm at with time. I think I can keep going. Yeah. Um, let's see. So this is like the thesis work that I was making. This is my final thesis, and I have no good pictures of my thesis, which is heartbreaking, but it's really long. I think it was 8.5 feet long, maybe 9 feet. And so it was really hard to capture. I'll show you that picture first. Um, So it was a long table that I kind of created this like circus like situation. By the end, I was kind of like calling it a parking lot. Like I kind of wanted it to be like an abandoned parking lot with like street signs and all kinds of stuff. But all a little bit like one flat tire is kind of something I said a lot, was like it's working almost, but you kind of have like a limp a little bit. Um, and so yeah, these are a series of brooches and a necklace. And I took like foam, it's like insulation foam, and I would carve out holes and then fill it with plaster so that I could have these like impressions. It's really hard to see from these images, but if you can look really closely, there's like all of this like kind of these impressions in the surface. And yeah, I kind of was, this whole thing just kind of like, I had completely different plans for it. And I wanted it to be like a topographical map, but that just didn't work. So I just like overhauled the whole thing like a week before and then created this. And I think it turned out okay. So yeah, I think that's like pretty good. I hope I didn't talk too short, but do y'all should I ask questions or should y'all ask questions to me?
Oh, we should, unless you want to talk about like the transition from your grad school work to the work you do
Here.
now.
Yes. Okay. I can totally do that. So I feel like there's a lot of like through lines to from grad school to now. It's been about a year since I've graduated, and so I'm kind of still like turning around the same ideas. But so on my way here, I live in Alabama, and I drove here. So the whole way, as kind of part of like preparation for this residency, I decided to take pictures of abandoned like road signs the whole way here. So I would like see one and it's basically just like the infrastructure and all the stuff that like is still left from the original billboard or sign. And I have like a catalog of images that I kind of came in with from across, the East, of what was gonna like use to create a series of brooches, and jewelry in general from that. So for the last 3.5 weeks, I've been kind of thinking about similar ideas like the infrastructure that's left from the signs that were like new at one point and we're advertising like this new business, and now all that's left is like some poles and um, cords and wire, and kind of capturing the sadness and just like how these things like at one point were like, somebody was really excited about this business that was opening, and now there's, the building is empty and the sign is all that's left, kind of like to memorialize, this thing that died. And so yeah, I've just been using those images to create these signs. So that's what's up in the gallery now is kind of that everything that came before it that I talked about still informs this work, and I'm still thinking about the same things, but it's maybe a little bit more focused to it's like more graphic, like instead of like, stuff like this, it really isn't as like, what am I looking at? Like, I know it's a piece of jewelry, but like, it doesn't really say anything outside of that. These signs are a little bit more like they're more focused, I guess.
For sale. These are for sale. Nice melts too. I love the little zip tie moment. Want to tell us anything about these?
So I feel like a lot of them, like they turned out like, I think this is like the most obvious one, that it's like an old road sign. Some of them really just kind of imply that look, like you might not get that from the one that's up there. So really, I was just kind of like loosely, if this is the first one, I was like, they're all gonna be road signs and they're gonna look just like road signs. But then they kind of, it transformed into like kind of seeing what was around Baltimore and like maybe trying to like mimic some of the buildings and what the state that they're in. Maybe more than even like the roadside. So the road signs were kind of just like a jumping off place. And I want to make more of them, but I just need to keep going. I think this is maybe just the start of the the whole project, and the rest of the work maybe just is more about surface and all the graffiti that's around and all of like the textures of the buildings and the kind of industrial surfaces. I just, there's so much, like you could walk literally outside the store and take pictures and then have like a whole series of work to make from what you can, have access to in the city in a way that I don't really, I mean, you really have to look a little harder in Birmingham to find like all the stuff that's here. So I feel like I could stay for longer. But yeah, I think that's good.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
So I see that you're mixing a lot of like forever materials, like steel and enamel, well, things that I think of as forever materials, like steel and enamel with not forever materials, like the foam and paper. And I'm wondering like how interested you are in like the decay of your own objects over time.
That's a good question. So, I mean, part of it is like limited material and like equipment. And so I don't have like always have access to a powder coat or like a, an enameling kiln. So it's just like, I'm also like impatient. So I'm like spray paint's fast, like all this stuff is fast. And I also kind of like that immediacy. And I do kind of think it's interesting because I got asked that in school, like, a lot of this is chalk and like paint. So if you actually wear it, something about my work is it is not like waterproof and it's not, I mean, some of it is, I try and like proof it as much as I can. But like I wouldn't like jump into a pool and it or it's like, it's toast. So I think if I were honest, it's more about like skill and like not knowing techniques that could maybe fortify it. But I do like that I'm working with the themes. I do kind of like, that's like something that's emerged and I kind of like it. I kind of like that that's something that happens. Even though if somebody buys it, I would want it to last. So that is like there's a tension there that like I have to tell everybody that buys something from me, like, don't go outside in the rain, like don't forget to take them out in the shower, like so there's that. But
I think it's also just a high expectation of jewelry that it gets to be like, it has to do both.
Yeah.
Right? Or you wouldn't think about that with like a sculpture or a painting.
That's what I was just like going there in my head, like you don't have the same expectations for, other stuff. And so, yeah.
One thing to consider is to make your life easier is it will come back to you to get repaired.
Oh,
So
it has,
it
yeah.
will come back to haunt you.
I know, I still have a pair of.
But even that is an expectation placed on jewelry that isn't.
Yeah.
Elliot's
it's a lifetime
wondering.
warranty.
Yeah. Elliot's wondering what this says. Does it say second?
It's a second arrow. And
It's
it's like just this concept that I think about. It's like a Buddhist concept. It's not really anything. It's just like something I heard and it stuck with me. It's like if you have something bad happen and then you shame yourself for it, the second arrow is the shame that you shame yourself with. So anyways, it doesn't relate. It's just kind of like I had to figure out a term to put on there to wipe off.
got it.
And I think that stuff makes its way into my work. So that's what I'm
Oh, I
thinking
thought it was
about.
like a found. Okay, cool.
Oh, no, yeah, it's just acrylic and Jay helped me make a little like, what is it called again? Cricut cutout,
Vinyl mats.
vinyl mats. And so I spray painted it and then sanded it off. So if that's something else I like to think about is like, what did I find and what did I make? And I like that sometimes you can't tell like what I found and what I like fabricated to look found. So that's kind of fun too.
Yeah, I would have thought this was something you found and just kind of cut.
Yeah, and so like, I mean, some of this, like this is a can that I found outside and then I like made it look like a wall, but I fabricated the top fence part. So it's like, yeah, like you kind of never know like what's fabricated and what's not. And I like that.
So in a way, like memories, like if they're real, but then most of it's just fabrication.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, like we're always remembering the last time we remember.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I read that in research. Yeah.
Larissa wanted to see the necklace, so good timing. And then Demi says there's blue stones. What do you mean? These. I know,
Oh,
Demi.
yeah.
It's like wearing. What are those?
I don't know, I bought them from here.
Oh, right. We don't know.
We don't know.
Blue.
Yes.
I have been lucky enough to get to see both the work that you're making here and the work that you made in grad school. And I do notice that like a couple of the materials and even a couple of the components as holdovers.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if you could talk about if you feel a distinction in your practice between finished objects and workable materials,
Yeah.
and what that distinction may or may not be.
I feel like there is no distinction. Like these pieces could end up in another piece at some point. It's like if sometimes like if somebody doesn't buy it or if I like lose interest in it, they just come apart again, you know? So like, let's say that like, I get tired of it. I'll either like, I disassemble, reassemble, disassemble, reassemble a lot. And I actually feel like that helps sort of, it helps the work because it's because I've had the stuff for so long, it's like kind of doing what I want it to do in the sense that there's like multiple layers. It's been with me. There's like, it has that like sense of time, already kind of encoded into it because I've had it so long and I've like worked with it and I've reworked it. So yeah, it is kind of like something that started to emerge is that like everything is material at all times. Nothing is exempt. Like I could use this whole room, you know, to inspire work. Like the wall.
The wall is very you.
The wall is beautiful. I could try and mimic that in a piece, or I could like use a piece of steel from the ceiling. You know?
I like the statement. Everything is material.
Everything's
Yeah, I also love nothing is exempt.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, nothing is. It's like this whole, you could make a piece from anything. I think.
have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, how precious these objects are to you, and if the individual components are more precious than the like lives that they live, whether temporarily or permanently, if the piece is bought.
Yeah.
Or is it more about what they are right now?
Yeah, I think that's the latter. I think like I like the process of making, and like something that I didn't say in the artist talk that's kind of important to my work is that like I'll have objects for a really long time and then I'll finally find like serendipitously find the thing that kind of like takes a gridlocked piece and like finishes it. So it's like it's again it's like the cycle of it and like the excitement of like finding that one thing that like I can put in here and now it's finished because I've been waiting on the thing that was going to finish it, and sometimes it takes years to like kind of finish something because I haven't found that thing yet. So I would say that like sometimes I get attached to the things I make if I felt like there was like a labor of love or I like the way it looks. But then a lot of times I'm really not attached to it. It's like the process of making it, and then I'm just like, you know, it sits in a box or it.
I would imagine with your floral work that helps. You're just like
you throw it in the trash
Yeah.
at the end of the weekend. Yeah, it's really sad, but it's like I would say I get attached to like a quarter of the stuff I make, and then it gives me like in about a year I'm like made more stuff that I'm attached to that the old stuff is like out, you know.
Do you have any components that you get attached to that you haven't used?
Yes. Yeah. I like I can like collect something and get really excited about it and not want to use like a particular stone because I know that it's gonna end up like going out into the
Right.
world. But I would say that like attachment to my work is like this weird thing because I get excited about making the new thing. So there's not really much like attachment to it, which maybe is weird, but
Maybe it's Buddhist.
maybe it's Buddhist, no attachment. That's not, if I could like in my life, I'd be in good shape, but with my work, yeah. I think I do get attached to about a quarter of it. And then the rest I'm like pretty good with. getting it out.
We have all these stones, with these like very, like conventional settings. I think there's like a really interesting, like even your pinbacks, like seeing like this very conventional, like jewelry forward, shape and form. Like what is their dynamic with the, found materials or like the more temporary materials and like, yeah, like what are they saying? Yeah.
No one's ever asked me that. I've got to think. Honestly, I think it's more just like the repertoire of like what I know how to do, you know? And maybe I need to take some more classes to kind of I see jewelry and I see like, and I'll look at books and I'm like, they're like innovating, you know, the pin back or the clasp. And I think that's a goal for me, is to like not just be looking at what other people are doing and like trying to do it. I think maybe it's a limitation in skill. And like, again, I wouldn't say I'm new to metal, but I haven't been doing it for a super long time. So I get a little pigeonholed with like how I do things. And so I love it when I'm like seeing a brooch. Demi, I feel like a lot of her work has like this like innovative way of like connecting materials. And so I am thinking about how I connect things. But I think that like, yeah, it's more like the library or the catalog in my head of how to do certain things is limited.
Well, I think, less of like a critique on like.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
specific knowledge and more like, I think it's really interesting seeing like these like traditional jewelry, like symbols.
Right.
And
Oh,
then
interesting,
seeing
yeah.
them next to like
Yeah, this is-
upholstery foam and like thinking about like what is that dynamic between the two, like
Yeah,
versus
It's like
just
an
garnet.
anchor,
Yeah.
to the craft.
Something really interesting in like the narrative you're presenting about these materials, that you can look at this and see like a stone set in a piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly. Like on one of the brooches, or maybe it was a necklace, I like, you know, cold connected with silver, like a piece of tape, you know, and so it was like, I do like thinking about like the connection to like the lineage of jewelry and that language, like you were talking about. And it's kind of like, I don't know what the word is. It's like, it's like unnecessary. It's like an unnecessary step to like, you know, cold connect with silver, a piece of tape. Like it almost feels like,
Frivolous.
what is frivolous? Thank you. That's it. Frivolous. And I do like that.
Well, and I think you're assigning, you have a lexicon, but then you're assigning value.
Value. Yes, definitely. It's like, and that's kind of what I like thinking about too, is like democratizing materials, and like plastic can be just as beautiful and interesting as like something that is like been like a stone that's been like faceted and a lot of time is spent on it. So I feel like I do like thinking about setting those next to each other. Like in this one, you know, you got, you know, I don't know what these are, but they're plastic and then they're stones, and I like the combination of like the haphazard and like the really like dialed in. Yeah. It's all about like those kind of like opposites or those polarities maybe.
Well, also, I think it's very clear that you're bringing people into your aesthetic, right? And like you're presenting a kind of a reveal of like a world. And I remember looking at your MFA show from afar and just being like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like the ring circus, or like like a little flea. You had something that was like a little flea circus, right? Yeah. It was like super exciting.
And I do like, you know, like whimsical, like a little like sprinkle of like whimsical kind of like non-seriousness, you know?
Yeah.
I'm curious, how the like associations with dignity and status and provenance that we typically associate to jewelry factor into the work you make, because the way that you like handle and approach material is so specific and so sort of distinct from what the way people traditionally handle things like precious stones.
if I could boil that question down to like one word, I feel like I think that when I feel the best and when I like think something is like dignified and beautiful, it's like there's a sense of unself-consciousness. And I feel like I'm trying to encapsulate that lack of self-consciousness in the work. It's like things don't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Like dignity comes in a lot of different packages, and I feel like this lack of self-consciousness is sometimes created with the stuff I find. There's like this like animated quality about, it's really hard to get like an animated unself-conscious quality in something. And I think I'm trying to do that. Like that's why I like a lot of the graffiti, because it's like not beautiful for beauty's sake. They were just like, there was emotion behind it. And you kind of can't replicate that sometimes, but I'm like attempting to replicate that unself-conscious, like unfiltered mark. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool.
Any other questions or
I
comments?
have a question about like the various, like the process and inspiration you have with the found objects. It seems like these were more like straightforward, like traffic signs. And with what's in there is more of like a theme of nostalgia. But like, how often is it you'll find an object and like will you see a piece within that?
Oh, cool.
Or will you see it more like as a color for a piece?
It's both, for sure. That's a good question. But yeah, a lot of times it's like, oh, it's pink, I'm gonna get it, you know, because I have like a pink thing happening. But then other times, yeah, there's like that piece of like that can looks like this like corrugated metal that I'm trying to like make perfect. I don't have to like do it from scratch, you know? So it's really like, there's a lot of reasons that I can collect things, but a lot of times it's either the color scheme or it has that kind of essence of like degradation that I am like trying to figure out. Yeah.
You actually kind of mentioned something I was just thinking about with color, and I'm wondering, it just seems like you have sort of a color palette that you're drawn to, and I wasn't sure because it seems like, you know, you're very free when it comes. You're very. It seems like you're very open to, you know, discovering whatever's going to work or whatever you're going to see. But it does look like you're drawn to certain colors. Is that true? Like yellow is
definitely, yeah. Pink, yellow, sometimes blue, mostly pink and yellow, I think. Light blue, pink, yellow, and blue. Yeah, I think it's just like I think it's more like instinctual, you know, and if it's not there, then I don't like it yet, you know, and I'm like, then I'll add a pink thing to it, and I'm like, okay, now I like it. So it's more like that kind of visceral gut feeling of like, what I prefer to look at, you know. And a lot of times these hues are like what you see with like, you know, faded photographs are kind of yellow, you know. So I think it probably has something to do with that, like the shades.
Nostalgic colors.
Colors of the shades I'm choosing like hot pink. Right. It's more like a aged. Yeah, there you go. So I think there is sometimes.
Sun.
Sun. I love sun. I love like there's like even like faded, like where, you know, where like you have something that's somewhere for a while and you take it off and then there's like an outline. I love stuff like that.
Cool.
Thank y'all.
Good job.
For listening.
One last question.
Yeah.
Make it an easy one.
Probably for me.
Did you know that artist residencies at the Baltimore Jewelry Center are made possible by donations?
Let me go grab the link.
BaltimoreJewelryCenter.org/donate.
Also, some of your work is for sale.
Oh yeah, it's all for sale except for this one here.
So if folks are interested, they can contact up and find out
what you want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna appreciate Jay as always. Drop that Oh, someone already did it. I think Merv here did it great, faster than me. Okay, good job. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for coming.